Hey everyone, Stakey here. So I just want to go through this real quick. One, I quit my job. I am currently looking for a new one. Yay, no more retail. Two, I had a health scare yesterday. It mostly was caused from stress. I figured that Be Still Just for Me, well, this project that I'm doing right now is kind of stressing me out a little bit because I'm putting too much pressure on myself to try and finish a chapter a week. So from now on, I'm just going to go at my own pace, and if I don't finish it within a week, I apologize. But a lot of you tell me to stop apologizing because of taking care of myself, so no more apologies anymore. If it takes longer, then it takes longer, and that's that. Okay. 3, I have a Discord now. You can find the link either in the description or in the pinned comment. I'm not sure which one yet, but it's going to be there. So if you want to hang out with the community, come and hang out. Come and chat with me. I'll probably stream some games there, or we can have like a game night with everybody. I'm still trying to figure that out. And that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. We're getting into the good, delicious stuff now. Hopefully no more bear attacks, you know? Okay then. Oh, wait, I also have the links to the story down below if you don't want to hear me read them, and if you want to go ahead and read ahead yourself, you may do so down in the description. Please don't forget to comment on the story as well. Let Trashy know that you're liking the story or that you're crying about it, because I cried about it a lot. Anywho, yeah, and that's about it. Okay, have a good time and enjoy the chapter. Bye-bye. I love you guys. No more nightmares. No more fear. No more bear. You slept through the remainder of the night like a baby once you closed your eyes to the sight of Bakugou's hand curled around your own, warm and comforting. The next morning, you felt an unfamiliar weight across your waist and a gentle heat at your back as you stirred awake to the sound of chirping birds outside. Refusing to open your eyes just yet, you attempted to sink further into the warm covers, but found that something nuzzled your neck and pulled you closer towards the solid wall behind you. Confused, you managed to finally peek one eye open. Once your vision cleared, you saw a single, pale, and muscular arm wrapped around your middle. You felt like the embodiment of that meme with the math problems floating around your head as you attempted to remember and connect the dots. Dinner, sleep, nightmare. Then you'd asked Bakugou to stay with you and he'd agreed. You remembered grasping his hand in the darkness and feeling eternally grateful for his presence. A combination of too little sleep, it being too early in the morning, and the gentle rise and fall of Bakugou's chest against your back forced a blush to rise into your cheeks. You resisted the urge to tense and instead relaxed into the bedsheets. It was far more comfortable than the couch, that much was true. You craved your own bed, though, especially after the events of the previous day. There was no possible way you could wiggle out of his hold without waking him up, so instead, you shifted a bit closer, taking advantage of Bakugou Katsuki being your big spoon. When you'd moved just an inch or two, he hummed pleasantly in his sleep and tightened his grip around you. You couldn't help but bite your lip to keep from giggling at the thought of someone like Bakugou being a cuddler. Not that you were complaining, of course. Your eyelids grew heavy, and you settled for falling asleep once more. Feeling warm, safe, and happy, you dozed off in the arms of the man who had saved your life less than 24 hours ago. A while later, the early morning sunlight filtered through Bakugou's closed eyelids as he slowly woke up. He expected the fabric of a pillowcase on his cheek, but instead felt something odd, and smelled shampoo? Opening his tired eyes, he realized his face was currently buried in a head full of hair. Your hair. He also felt a weight against his chest and his arms draped tightly around your waist. Oh, fuck. Everything from the previous night came flooding back like water bursting through a broken dam. From running up to check on you after your nightmare, to you asking him to stay. Apparently, he'd gone from holding your hand to tossing and turning until you were snuggled up against him. And it felt good. You fit perfectly against him, his legs curled up into your own like a fitted slot. He'd never woken up with someone before. Bakugou's bed was always empty aside from himself. The few times he'd shared a bed, it was for, well, definitely not sleeping, and either he or the other person always left right after. Thinking back on it now, he was probably an asshole about it, but he couldn't change the past. You were obviously still asleep, breaths even and shallow against his arm. If he tried to move, you'd surely wake up, and after everything with the stupid fucking bear, he'd figured it was best for you to sleep in as much as possible. And he didn't want to move anyway. He ran warmer than most and hated feeling cold, so the heat you gave off from such close contact eased the building tension at the situation. He didn't remember you waking up at all, so him being here must have truly been what you needed to fall asleep safely. A feeling of contentment bloomed in his chest at that thought.
Fuck it.
Once again, he decided to give in to temptation, pulled you flush against him, and buried his nose in your hair. The context behind sharing a bed like this was far from how he'd pictured it, but now that he was here, the thought of going back to your couch made him grimace. Not yet, though. He still had time. Bakugou closed his eyes and admitted silently that he wouldn't mind waking up like this more often. Awakening a second time felt different than the first. The sun outside had risen higher into the sky and warmed the room, but you felt cooler somehow. You stretched across the mattress and reached for Bakugou behind you, but he wasn't there. His side of the bed was empty with wrinkled sheets and an indented pillow. You felt yourself start to panic at the thought of suddenly being alone again, but you took a deep breath to calm yourself. That's when you smelled food? Flopping back down into the mattress, you sighed in relief. He must have gotten up and made breakfast. Sitting up, you yawned and attempted to stand up, but staggered a bit from an aching stiffness in your knee. Oh, right. You looked down at your hands wrapped in white gauze and bit the inside of your cheek. Bakugou would surely ask you today about what happened since you were in no state to explain anything properly last night. What would he say when you told him the truth? Would he judge you? Call you weak? Label you a burden? But he wouldn't really do any of that, would he? He'd helped you so much and exhibited more patience than you thought he had in him. Bakugou seemed to hate lying, so it only made sense that whatever he did and said wasn't an act, right? You wrung your hands nervously while you disappeared into the upstairs bathroom to wash up. The bandages would need to be changed after you showered, and you need to stop by the store on the way home today to pick up some more since all you had at the apartment were band-aids and basic antiseptic. Don't think about it now, just stay calm. It'll be fine. You told yourself as you grabbed your phone and made your way out of the bedroom. The delicious smell of Bakugou's cooking was far stronger out here than behind the closed bedroom door. The stairs creaked under your feet as you walked down to the first floor and slowly made your way over to Bakugou in the kitchen. He'd probably heard you but hadn't acknowledged you yet. Maybe he was waiting for you to make the first move. The soft light of the late morning sun lit up the wooden cabin beautifully, and the domesticity of the scene almost made you feel like you'd walked into a dream. "Good morning," you said, now just a few steps away from him. When he looked up, relief crossed his face when you sleepily smiled at him.
"Morning. I was going to wake you anyway since the food's almost done."
His voice was calm and even. You were glad he didn't launch straight into an interrogation, but you knew it'd happen eventually. "Thank you for cooking." You hoped that your normal energy and enthusiasm would return as the day wore on. "It smells great, like it always does." Shuffling your bare feet on the floor, you decided to say one last thing circling around in your mind. "And, thanks for staying with me last night." Bakugou should have expected you to thank him, but he still stared at you with a spatula hovering above the hot stove.
"It's okay,"
was all he could manage without feeling like too much of a fool.
"Did you sleep at all?"
The tension in his shoulders eased when you nodded, even though he already assumed you'd slept through the rest of the night without issue. Yeah, I did. I slept really well, actually." Before he could react to that, you walked towards him with that smile he'd missed so much the previous day, disappeared behind him, and wrapped your arms around his middle. He tensed on reflex since you'd never done this before. He didn't particularly like the inability to see what was going on behind him, but he glanced over his shoulder, saw your face pressed against his back, and let out a near-silent sigh. Arigato, you repeated, emphasizing that he was just going to have to accept the appreciation no matter what. His ears burned and he rolled his eyes, but his free hand patted your bandaged one in as comforting a way as he could muster at the moment. You squeezed him a bit tighter at that.
Better move before you get hot oil on you,
he ordered as he watched the sizzling pan in front of him. Before you came along, he really never would have considered enjoying such casual affection, but with how genuinely and freely you gave it, Bakugou found he didn't mind so much. Reluctantly, you let go and moved away from him to grab some glasses from the drying rack next to the sink. After breakfast, he'd get some answers out of you about what the hell happened the previous day. It felt wrong to switch gears from such a peaceful moment just yet. When the food was done, the two of you plated your own portions and sat down to eat. The banter that was noticeably absent from dinner came back slowly as the two of you navigated around the elephant, or bear, in the room. As much as he enjoyed your usual lively self, he could tell you were just putting on a front. No one got over that kind of traumatic experience in a day, not even him, and he'd seen more than his fair share of anguish throughout the years. More than he'd openly admit to. Plus, the curiosity was about to drive him insane. This kind of soft mental fortitude wasn't something he was used to, so his natural craving to demand answers warred with his newfound patience. Every time the white gauze wrapped around your hands came into view, he mentally cringed. Bakugou? The call of his name and wave of your hand in front of his face made him blink upon the realization that his mind had wandered a bit too far into the recent past. You okay? He grunted and played it off like it was nothing. That non-answer didn't satisfy you at all, but he seemed lost in thought as he loaded up his fork and shoved the rest of his breakfast into his mouth. Rather than press for more, you picked at your own food sheepishly. When both of you finished eating, you attempted to argue with him over the dishes, but one stern look from him towards your bandaged hands made you back down fairly quickly. A feeling of impending dread seeped under your skin as you got up and sat down on the couch, waiting for him to ask what you didn't want him to ask. Bakugou wasted no time in doing just that. Once the dishes were done, he followed you to the couch, leaned forward with his forearms on his knees, turned to you, and said,
Tell me about yesterday.
Straightforward and to the point. Even though you expected it, you couldn't help but wince and tense up. You heard him sigh and saw his hand card through his hair as though he were already exhausted from the day.
Just, tell me what happened. Where did you go and why didn't you tell me?
You picked up on the smallest hint of desperation in his voice as you fiddled with the ends of your bandages and avoided looking at him. Guilt ate you like flies flooding to a fresh wound. He deserved to know what happened, that much was certain. But you were so fucking embarrassed over the whole thing that vocalizing everything in your head sounded as bad as reliving it all over again. You started, trying to figure out how to word it without breaking down or making him upset. With your phone gripped tightly in your hand, you swallowed the lump forming in your dry throat. I had to go to the bathroom from all the water I drank. I thought I could just go and come back without interrupting your training. I didn't think about... Fuck. You started to crack and felt tears well up in your eyes and blur your vision. Then, when you couldn't hold it any longer, everything just came barreling out. Bakugou, I'm so sorry. You turned to him with hot tears rolling down your cheeks, shock at your outburst written on his face. I was stupid and I panicked when I saw the bear and I just ran, even though you're probably supposed to play dead or whatever, and if you hadn't come when you did, something bad could have happened and the trip is ruined and I'm sorry. Suddenly, you were cut off by Bakugou lunging forward and wrapping you up in his arms. Tears flowed with renewed vigor as you buried your face in the crook of his neck and clung to him desperately. I'm sorry. Kept repeating in your head over and over again as you poured out all the feelings clenched in your chest at having put yourself in danger. It never failed to amaze Bakugou how things often snowballed when something very small grew into a giant disaster. All this had happened because you didn't want to bug him about a bathroom break of all things. He wished there was a gentler way of telling you to stop being an idiot and that you should stop apologizing. How could either of you have predicted a fucking bear would show up? Sure, the woods housed all manners of animals, and so far he'd seen none here that didn't exist in his own universe, but he figured any habitable spaces out here would have been built on fairly safe land. He didn't kill the damn thing, though, just scared it off with some singed fur and loud noises. All he cared about now was that you were safe and out of harm's way. After a minute, you seemed to calm down, and he unwound his arms from around your back and used the pad of his thumb to wipe away a falling tear from your cheek.
Stop apologizing. Not like you could have known. Hell, even I didn't think about all the animals that could be out here.
You sniffled and avoided his gaze until he shifted your chin with his knuckle to force you to look at him. He read the guilt in your eyes like an open book, a look he'd seen mirrored in himself last night.
And the trip isn't ruined. It's not over either. We still have today. Just swear to me you'll be honest from now on and not go off on your own. Got it?
You bit your lip, cleared your throat, and nodded. Honestly, he was surprised that he wasn't blowing up about this shit. It's what he would have done if any of his friends back home had pulled some stupid stunt to put themselves in danger, but you'd apparently nestled yourself into one of the few soft spots he had. After a minute, you excused yourself to wash your face in the bathroom. While you were gone, Bakugou rubbed his eyes with the balls of his hands, leaned his head on the back cushion of the couch, and stared up at the slowly spinning fan attached to the ceiling.
God damn it. The fuck do I do now?
He assumed that you wouldn't want to go outside again today, so Bakugou wondered what to do for the rest of the day. You had until 5 o'clock this afternoon, before the two of you had to be out of here, right? Before he could brainstorm ideas, you came out of the bathroom looking at least a bit calmer and sat next to him. I know you don't want me to keep apologizing, you started, but I guess I was just scared of you thinking I was weak or a burden or something. Whatever Bakugou assumed you were going to say, it wasn't that. He furrowed his brows and sat up to look at you properly.
Why the hell would you think that? No normal person here can outrun a fucking bear, right?
You sighed through your nose. I mean, I guess not. I think they can run faster than most people assume. Maybe I just don't like the idea of being saved, a literal damsel in distress. You looked like you were beating yourself up over this, and he wasn't about to let that happen.
Listen,
he said, forcing you to turn to him with his stern voice.
Stop feeling sorry for yourself. You aren't a damsel or princess stuck in a castle or whatever bullshit fairy tale stories they have here.
Staring at him, you stopped fidgeting with your bandages so he could tell you were paying attention.
You needed help, and I helped. That's it. And besides, technically you did outrun the bear at first, so good fucking job on that.
That last bit was his pitiful attempt to cut the tension in the room, and it seemed to work when you rolled your eyes at the translation and huffed. You're a really good motivator, you know that? With a small smile, you continued. Also, I fucking hate bears now. The worst ever. Your tension-diffusing humor surpassed his own because he couldn't help but sputter and shake his head at such raw honesty. After a second, you joined in too, and, for the first time since yesterday, the two of you managed to laugh. The laughter died down after a minute, and you both returned to comfortable silence.
You're such a weirdo,
he said. You just stuck your tongue out at him. We've already been over this. You must not mind so much that I'm weird. And you're one to talk, Mr. Explosion Hands.
Shut up.
The smile on his face contradicted his words.
I'm gonna shower.
You nodded as he grabbed his bag and headed into the bathroom. The couch cushions were soft and comfortable behind your back as you eased into them and closed your eyes for a moment. That hadn't gone as badly as you'd predicted, though you really wished that all this crying and anxiety would disappear already. Going back out into the woods worried you, but you didn't want to deprive Bakugou of his last day here either. He looked so happy being able to use his quirk again, and you hated the idea of stifling his enthusiasm. Maybe he could go out while you remained at the cabin? However, the thought of being alone sent shivers down your spine. If you could convince him to stay a bit closer to the cabin while keeping your promise to remain close by, not that you'd wander off anyway, then maybe you could deal with it, for his sake. While Bakugou showered, you went to the kitchen table and opened up the host book containing information about the area in addition to checkout instructions. You read them over a few times to make sure you wouldn't miss anything before you checked out when the bathroom door opened.
What's this shit?
Bakugou asked with a towel around his neck as he leaned over the table. Checkout instructions. Stuff we have to do before leaving, putting up dishes, taking the sheets off the bed, grabbing the garbage, stuff like that. You hummed for a second before a brilliant idea popped into your head. Oh, I know. We can wash our clothes here so they'll be clean when we get back tonight. Bakugou seemed to ponder over your words before answering.
I am pretty much out of clean clothes by now. They got a washer and dryer here.
You walked over and opened up a closet by the kitchen to reveal a stacked washer and dryer unit. It was similar to what you had at home, but nicer and newer. Ta-da! He rolled his eyes but went over to grab his bag anyway. A wad of mostly black clothes were dumped into the washer as you went to grab your own bag. Walking over, you stopped, remembering the laundry incident from weeks ago when you washed both his and your clothes together.
What's that look for?
He asked with his empty overnight bag in hand. Do you mind if we wash them all together? It'll take up less time. You argued logically while your ears burned slightly. Things were different now. Your relationship had changed drastically since then. Surely, you both could deal with something as minor as this without too much embarrassment, right?
Fine.
Bakugou slung his bag over his shoulder and cut his eyes to the side.
They're just clothes. Doesn't matter to me.
With that, he walked past you and sat down on the couch. You missed the heat that coated his cheeks at the same exact memory. Feeling more at ease that he presumably didn't care, you tossed your own clothes into the washer on top of his while avoiding peeking inside to see a glimpse of anything that might set your face on fire again. You followed the instructions to make sure you didn't use too much detergent or put in the wrong setting. One outfit remained in your bag for after your shower. With chores underway, you sat down on the couch next to him before he asked,
What do you want to do for the rest of the day?
You weren't sure if he'd go along with your plan or not, and to be honest, you weren't so confident about it yourself. Well, you started while picking at the bandages on your hands. I thought we could go outside for a few hours so you could train. We could stay closer to the cabin, find a different spot. Obviously, I won't wander off anywhere. Then we can come back, have lunch, relax, and finish that task list. Bakugou was a bit stunned that you'd put forward going back outside after yesterday. He assumed that you'd want to remain inside for the entire day.
You sure? Only if you actually want to, and not just to let me train. Don't lie.
He was a lot of things, but stupid wasn't one of them. You always went overboard with making sure he was comfortable and occupied. While he appreciated it more than he knew how to say, this time he needed to be sure you weren't going to panic while out in the woods. It's fine. He damn well knew it probably wasn't, in fact, fine. I won't wander off or anything. Promise. His eyes stared at you unblinking while trying to judge whether or not it was actually a smart idea to indulge you.
If you want to come back, you better say something. Got it?
That stupid smile of yours melted him more than he'd openly admit. Got it.
And stick close to me. I'll find a different spot close by. Go shower so I can change your bandages.
As though you had nearly forgotten about your wounds, he watched you look down at your palms and deflate. I can change them on my own, you know.
I know, but maybe I want the first aid practice anyway. Indulge me.
You tried to look annoyed, but it came off more as cute than intimidating to him. Fine, fine. We have to stop by a store on the way back since I don't have anything other than band-aids at home. He watched you grab your own bag and disappear behind the bathroom door. While you were busy, he went ahead and packed the bag you took with you outside with some unopened water bottles and a few of those cookies you liked so much. He even stuffed one into his mouth while he waited for you to finish showering. It made him think back to that damn kiss yesterday. He'd caught you by surprise, tasting the crumbs of chocolate on your tongue and lips. Bakugou wasn't one to gravitate toward sweets, but he'd gladly indulge if it meant putting a flustered grin on your face. Fuck. Could things go back to how they were? Carefree and easy? Well, mostly easy. He was still grappling with this whole relationship situation, being stuck here for 3 more weeks, and figuring out the impacts of his actions that he'd inevitably carry with him back home. When you came out of the shower, he gestured for you to grab the first aid kit that he'd put back under the sink. You handed it to him and sat down on the couch with your palms facing the ceiling. Bakugou took out everything he needed and got to work bandaging your hands. Your wounds looked like they were starting to heal, so at least you'd avoided an infection. He concentrated fully on cleaning and dressing the scrapes and cuts. Your hands weren't calloused and hard like his own from years of fighting and training. Soft skin that smelled of soap, skin that he handled with delicate care. He had you roll up your pant leg to access your knee. A new bruise had formed overnight on your calf, but he ignored commenting on it and instead bandaged up your knee. You said nothing while he worked, and the words damsel in distress came back to mind. Even though you didn't have a quirk, he didn't consider you weak or helpless by any means. You thanked him when he was done, as he put everything back in the first aid kit. Did you already pack my bag? You asked when you lifted it and found it not empty.
Yeah, water and those cookies you like,
he replied nonchalantly. You didn't have to, but thanks. He just rolled his eyes and flicked you on the forehead. Hey!
Dummy. I don't do anything I don't want to do. How many times do I have to say it?
You slapped his hand away and managed a smile. Heading towards the door, you grabbed Bakugou's orange hoodie off the back of the couch and followed after him. You were positive he'd seen you snatch it up and felt grateful that he didn't say anything about it. It smelled like him, reminded you of the safety and comfort Bakugou brought with him whether he realized it or not. Rather than walk ahead of you like he did the past couple of days, Bakugou kept close to your side despite your slower pace. He led you down a new direction this time, taking your advice to avoid returning to the spots he'd already found. Every noise, every snap of a twig, every flutter of bird wings in the branches made you clench your fists around the straps of your bag. You stared straight ahead and focused solely on avoiding letting your mind wander to anything that might be lurking in the bushes just off the well-walked path. The path ahead finally opened up to a clearing that Bakugou seemed to approve of. You took a good look around and sat against a tree that had decent visibility of the surrounding area before folding Bakugou's hoodie in your lap like a pillow. Deep breath in, deep breath out. You told yourself, despite the slight tremor in your fingers as you attempted to calm your anxiety over being back out in the woods. You were fine. Bakugou was here. Nothing else would get you and you wouldn't wander off. Everything would be fine. It seemed like every few seconds Bakugou would glance up to make sure you were still there. You couldn't blame him, and to be honest, you appreciated his watchfulness. The sound of his explosions and bursts of fire surprisingly helped calm you down. Maybe due to the fact that you now associated it with protection in addition to just looking badass. You hoped fruitlessly for your stress level to dissipate over time, but you felt like you were about to bolt right out of your skin for the entire time you sat there. Maybe coming back out was a bad idea after all, but you were already here and hated backing down and ruining Bakugou's last opportunity to use his quirk. Despite his comforting words earlier, you knew that guilt would eat at you until you made it back home where you could hopefully leave all of this behind. Bakugou watched you like a hawk as he jumped around and practiced his maneuvers. The exuberant and carefree feelings from yesterday were gone and replaced with palpable tension. He should have argued with you about going outside, but it was too late now, and the last thing he wanted was to fight over something. Which sounded odd coming from him, but it was the truth. He wasn't sure how much time had passed, but when he felt like he'd exhausted everything he wanted to do, Bakugou walked over and grabbed the bottle of water you got out for him. More time spent training wouldn't help him feel better about all this, so he gestured down the path that led towards the cabin. Relaxing for the rest of the day sounded good anyway. Fix lunch, chill out, do chores, go home. Your apartment wasn't his home. It wasn't his to claim, but it was all he had right now, and he was grateful that you'd not only let him stay, but helped make things as comfortable as possible. He couldn't help but wonder how much of a selfish dick he would have been if the tables were reversed. Letting a stranger stay in his apartment, helping them with basic needs, or even helping them have fun in an otherwise shitty situation. Weeks ago, he probably wouldn't have extended the same kindness you did. Maybe you had more of an impact on him than Bakugou realized. Once again, he walked side by side with you back to the cabin in silence, hoping the tension visible on your face would be gone soon. He listened for odd noises and kept a vigilant watch on the outskirts of the path for movement, but Bakugou saw nothing except for some birds and squirrels. Hopefully, he'd scared off any predators for good. You let out a breath as soon as you walked through the front door.
Are you hungry?
He asked. I won't say no to food. It seemed like the topic of lunch made you a bit more comfortable as well. The picnic idea he'd planned yesterday was definitely not happening anymore. It was reasonable that you wanted to be outside for as little time as possible. He'd figure out some other vaguely romantic gesture later.
Let me shower, but... shit. I washed all my fucking clothes at once. I'll shower before we leave or when we get back, whatever.
Bakugou waved his hand dismissively in the air before he started pulling out things for lunch. There wasn't much left, but he'd planned it that way. He hated when something went to waste. As he got to work on food prep, you went over to the washer to toss everything into the dryer. It still felt weird that all his things were mixed in with yours. He wasn't about to make a big deal out of it like the first time, though. The dorms at UA had laundry centers, and things sometimes got left behind or mixed up. Kaminari usually wrote embarrassing signage for things he found mixed into his laundry. Luckily, nothing seemed to fall out before you slammed the dryer door shut and started the machine. No big deal. You sat down behind him on the couch and buried your nose in your book with the TV on low in the background. Bakugou wondered how you'd fare once you got back to your apartment situated far away from any and all bears. He also wondered how you'd sleep. Would you have nightmares again? Would you ask him to stay one more time? Did he stupidly enjoy waking up like that? Yeah, he did. Was it a dangerously indulgent thing to enjoy? Probably. After sleeping in a bed again, the thought of your couch made him grimace. He wasn't about to invite himself into your bed, though. Bakugou suppressed a curse at the sudden thought that popped into his head. Here you were dealing with anxiety, and the last thing he needed on his mind right now was anything inappropriate. He gripped the knife until his knuckles turned white and finished lunch quicker than anticipated from his intense concentration.
Oi,
he called out.
Food done.
Wow, that was pretty quick. You mumbled with a bit of surprise. It was a speedy lunch even for Bakugou. You walked over to him and started to get down some plates when you noticed something interesting. Are you okay? He did a double take at you with furrowed brows.
Yeah, why?
Your ears are pink, you said, pointing up to his ears. Once your phone translated, you watched in real time as the tint on his ears turned even deeper. Was he really? Bakugou, are you blushing? He just scoffed at you as though the mere thought was ridiculous.
Don't be stupid,
he replied, while avoiding looking you in the eyes and appearing mildly flustered. No, pretty sure you are. Why? Oh, this was good. The perfect distraction you needed. You were going to milk this for all it was worth since you almost never saw him like this. After his little cookie kiss against the tree yesterday, it was time for some proper payback.
Fix your damn plate,
was all he said, completely ignoring your question, which sold him out immediately. Deny it all you want, but your ears are almost the same color as your eyes, you said in a sing-song type voice, mocking him just the tiniest bit. You could hear his teeth grind and saw his eye twitch. Ignoring me now? Weren't you annoyed when I ignored you the other day? Bakugou stuck his finger right in your face, but you didn't back down when he said,
eat the food.
Each word carried an emphatic pause, along with his stinging glare, but you knew by now that he wouldn't actually hurt you. You piled food onto your plate with a pleasant hum. I'll get you to tell me whatever it is you're hiding. Bakugou's boiling blood was practically audible as you tried not to laugh when you sat down at the table. The amount of fun you were having at pressing Bakugou for answers was probably dangerous for your health. He ignored you at every turn, stabbing his food with more force than necessary like a sword through an enemy's gut. And the entire time his ears remained like two glowing beacons. Stubborn versus stubborn. Two hardheads against one another. This probably wouldn't end well, but you would ponder without regret later. You know, if you just tell me, then maybe your ears would go back to normal. Whatever you're thinking about must be good to stay so quiet about it. You look really cute like this, you know. You should really show your embarrassment more often. The aura that radiated off of him felt dangerous and foreboding. One more comment couldn't hurt, right? Oh, what about... Bakugou suddenly slammed his hands flat on the table and glared daggers at you.
Will you shut up?
However, he must not have looked as intimidating as he wanted to, because you paused for only a moment after his outburst. That, or you weren't scared of him. Not that he really wanted you to think he was scary. Now, anyway. What if I don't? What will you do? You asked with a brave voice. Bakugou Katsuki never backed down from a challenge. The chair scooted back from under him as Bakugou stood up and loomed over the table, which actually seemed to make you waver, nervousness apparent in your eyes. You'd asked for this.
You want to know what I'll do?
He walked slowly around the table, one finger trailing the wood grain ominously, as if ready to snap forward towards you as soon as he was in range. You promptly stood up, grabbed your phone, and circled around to the other side of the table. A standoff. Two could play this game. Laughing weakly, you said, now, hold. Bakugou flooded his hands with sparks and easily launched himself over the table to the other side, but you were quick and darted underneath and between the chairs before scampering away.
Get back here!
No fucking way! You shouted back through your own laughter. While Bakugou was fairly agile and could use his quirk to maneuver around furniture, you dodged and slid around every corner like a fleeing rabbit chased by a fox. You knew there was no way you could run from him forever, but you weren't about to give up that easily. Your luck finally ran out when you attempted to run up the stairs, only for Bakugou to shoot himself up to the balcony and land on the top step with what you could only describe as an evil grin. When you tried to backtrack, he jumped right over you and landed effortlessly on the base of the stairs. To be honest, it was an incredibly hot stunt. Truce? You squeaked out. He just shook his head and stomped his way towards you like a cat ready to pounce. That perfectly described what happened as he lunged forward quicker than you could react, wrapped a strong arm around your waist, and hoisted you over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. You were caught, and there was no way to escape.
Did you really think you could get away?
Struggling was fruitless, but you tried anyway as he carried you back down the stairs towards somewhere you couldn't see. At least the view of his butt from here was pretty nice. I mean, no, but at least I tried. You felt yourself being lifted up and then placed down on the couch with your hair falling in all directions as Bakugou stared down at you. You have autonomy and obviously don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. Bakugou only seemed to grow bolder from your backtracking. He locked both his hands onto the cushion on either side of your head, trapping you in a cage of muscle before he bent down nose to nose with you. Now you were the one blushing as he flipped the dynamic.
You're right,
he growled out, your phone held tightly against your chest between the two of you.
I do whatever I want, when I want. And right now?
Bakugou paused, giving you time to sweat just a little from the hungry glint in his eyes.
I want to do this.
He launched immediately into tickling you under the arms as you fruitlessly tried to pin them to your sides and push him away at the same time. This had become his go-to form of torture that wouldn't actually cause you harm. Ruining the good mood after so much melancholy and anxiety was the last thing he wanted to do. Your laughter filled the room as you slowly lost control of your balance, and without realizing it, he'd basically crawled on top of you when your resolve had landed you on your back from doubling over with laughter. It wouldn't take long before you gave up at this rate. Stop, you menace! You screeched, through gasps of laughter. Bakugou grinned in victory as he stared down at you, chest heaving and lips flushed from biting them. His left hand rested on the armrest of the couch, while his other hovered over your side, fingers ghosting across the fabric of your shirt. That's when he realized the compromising position he'd put you both in. Apparently, you came to the same conclusion as you gasped, and your eyes widened, staring up at him almost needily. He didn't move. His eyes flickered down to your bottom lip pulled taut between your teeth. Holding himself in check this week had been difficult, but he'd managed to avoid a situation like this. But it was only an inevitability at this point. In one swift movement, you reached up and wrapped your hands around the back of his neck to pull him down to you, and crashed his lips against yours as though starving for the air in his own lungs. The idea of pulling away was entertained for less than a second before he moved his mouth against yours in a hungry rhythm which you didn't hesitate in reciprocating. His fingers dug into the arm of the couch while his other hand rested against your side, thumb rubbing circles over the slight rise and fall of your stomach. He closed his eyes and focused on the blood-pumping pulse that flooded his ears alongside your heavy breathing as you wound your fingers through his hair. You must have liked the feeling because that's where they always ended up. Truth be told, your nails ghosting over his scalp sent shivers down his spine, and part of him wanted you to grab a handful and yank. But he was far too distracted by your taste and ghosting breath over his face to think or act with normal clarity. He swallowed the sounds you made eagerly, as though dining on ambrosia. The kiss didn't even start out that slow before he quickened the pace, his tongue licking across your lips to ask for permission, which you gave without hesitation. The space between you dwindled as Bakugou sunk down low into the couch until you were chest to chest, heartbeat to heartbeat, intoxicatingly luscious. All you could feel was Bakugou, his lips on yours, his weight on top of you, his soft hair twirled around your fingers. You'd taken a risk since the two of you had been tiptoeing around each other after the last makeout session, but Bakugou seemed just as pent up as you were, judging by how he mirrored every move you made. You nibbled on his lips, which made him kiss you harder through a low growl and push you deeper into the couch, a breathy moan escaping from you as a result. It felt so good to be trapped under him, to be right where he wanted you. In another act of bravery, one of your hands wandered agonizingly slowly down his shoulder and across the twitching muscles of his back. They moved deliciously beneath your fingers, and you just barely registered him moan in response. Fuck, this was the most turned on you'd been in a long while. When he finally came up for air, a thin trail of saliva connected your tongues. You couldn't help but feel drawn even closer. You didn't want this to end. Not yet. Not now. Lust overrode your common sense as you brought him back down to you, your lips ghosting over the juncture where his neck met his shoulder and tentatively kissed his heated skin. Bakugou's mind was fuzzy and cloudy with overpowering thoughts of wanting to touch you and be touched in return. Your fingers sent shockwaves across his skin and goosebumps down his spine. He sucked in the smell of your hair, making him remember waking with you this morning. Focused on your warm lips moving with determination, and unfocused with literally anything else, Bakugou briefly wondered what else your mouth was capable of.
More.
He thought selfishly, as his fingers on your side slid under the hem of your shirt slightly. Fuck, he wanted to do more. Move more. Touch you more. Taste you more. But that brief breath of air slowly and surely zapped some rational thought back into his overstimulated brain.
Pull away.
The voice in the back of his mind urged.
Protect yourself.
It was painfully obvious that neither of you actually wanted to stop. And if the circumstances had been different, then chances are things would continue as they were. But with an incredible amount of struggle, he managed to push himself up as your hand left his back, your nails scraping as though weakly clawing to bring him back down. And damn it, when he looked down at you, he was tempted. Shiny, kiss-bruised lips, blown-out eyes glistening with desire, chest heaving with uneven breaths. God, there was no denying he thought you were sexy as hell. Just like the last few times this happened, he was at a loss for what to say or do as he swallowed the lump in his throat and attempted to reel in the rational section of his brain. When no words were exchanged, he decided to lean up into a sitting position and untangle himself from you so you could sit up as well. He was too focused on himself to read the range of confused expressions you cycled through until the two of you sat with an awkward amount of space between you on the couch. You abruptly stood up from the couch, startling him just a bit. Why did you look stressed of all things right now? Shit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll be right back. Your words sounded jumbled, and your tone was uncertain, but he couldn't even ask you to clarify before you practically jogged into the bathroom and shut the door.
What the fuck just happened?
He asked himself. All he got out of that was a sorry, and the rest was a questionable guess at best. As he felt around for your phone, which had slid between the couch cushions, he groaned at the uncomfortable feeling in his pants.
I blame you for this,
he said, his words directed down below. While you still hid in the bathroom, he managed to stand up and pour himself some ice water, going so far as to suck on a whole ice cube while he was at it to cool himself down. Wasn't it obvious that he was as into what the two of you were doing as you were? Why did you feel the need to apologize? Was it his lack of succinct words that threw you off or something else?
The hell do I say now?
If things had kept going as they had been minutes ago, then it would have been too fast, right? He couldn't... No, definitely shouldn't. Right? Right? You popped out of the bathroom at the same time as he almost choked on his water at the hypothetical question that popped into his head. He managed to wipe his mouth and turn to you from behind the kitchen counter. A lack of confidence that you seemed to show very little of, around him anyway, was evident on your face as you made a typing gesture in the air. Bakugou grabbed your phone from his pocket and held it up for you to see before he slid it across the counter to you. Holding it, you opened up the app and honestly felt like hiding away in a hole. Sorry,
Why are you sorry?
He asked, straight to the point. Wasn't it obvious? You'd crossed some type of consensual boundary, right? Kiss first and ask questions later wasn't exactly the smartest move to make, but no one really planned makeout sessions. They were a product of spontaneous hormones and feeling wrapped up in the moment. But you pulled away. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Talking about this was far more difficult than it should have been. You were both adults, and you could have a conversation about boundaries and consent, damn it. The tension in Bakugou's shoulders escaped as he sighed, ran a hand through his straw-colored hair, and walked around the kitchen counter to wrap you up in a hug. This was not how you expected him to react, truth be told.
You didn't do anything wrong, dummy. Stop apologizing for shit.
Tentatively, your hands came up and around his back to reciprocate the hug. Wow, you both really needed to talk about this sooner rather than later. Impulsiveness rarely ended well when it came to these types of topics. You needed to know where he stood on this, on how far he wanted to go with you. Oh God, this really was a mess. Your face felt like it was on fire, so you knew now definitely wasn't the time to have that kind of conversation. Luckily, he couldn't see your embarrassment with your face buried in his neck. He smells good. Calm down already. When Bakugou finally let go, you knew you couldn't hide the evident warmth blossoming on your face.
Didn't I say earlier that I don't do anything I don't want to do?
You managed to clear your very dry throat. Yeah, but... Taking a deep breath, you silenced your line of thinking in order to quickly change the subject. I'll just grab my clothes from the dryer. Then we can finish the list and chill out until we have to go. Deal? Great. Sounds good. Desperate for a distraction, you slid around Bakugou and power walked to the dryer with your bag. All you had to do was pick your things out of the jumbled pile of warm clothes. Shirt, sock, sweatpants, underwear. A glimpse of orange splashed with dark green and black was unearthed when you grabbed a pair of panties. It was definitely Bakugou's, but all you were concerned about were your own things. Focus. It's just underwear. However he assumed today would play out, Bakugou wasn't prepared for the events of the past hour. From one extreme to the other, the past 24 hours had tested his patience and resolve on unexpected levels. He was honestly ready to get back to your place and return to this new familiarity, boring routine and all. Bakugou bounded up the creaky stairs without a word to busy his hands and his mind. He'd grab his things and shower when you were done. Things would go back to normal after a while like they always did. The awkwardness couldn't last. Being stuck in a car with you for 2 hours without an escape route made him wince, so he hoped by the time 5 o'clock rolled around, both of you would get over this and move on. There was a conversation that needed to take place, but it damn well wasn't going to happen today. The sheets were yanked off the bed and pillowcases tossed into the pile until the large bed lay bare, aside from the comforter and naked pillows. He still wondered what was going to happen tonight, but that was yet another topic he didn't feel like dwelling on. Bakugou carried the sheets down the stairs. It seemed like you were done with the dryer, so he could grab his things and finally take a shower. He looked around and saw you in the kitchen cleaning up the plates both of you left lying around after he'd chased after you.
Oi,
he said, catching your attention. You looked up and he gave you a,
what do I do with these?
Look while holding up his arms. Pointing towards the washer, you replied, put him in there. He obeyed, stuffing the sheets and pillowcases into the washer and closing the door. You knew how much soap to use on this thing, so he left it to you. Bakugou hated having someone help him with such a stupidly simple task, but he'd swallowed his pride countless times at this point. One more wouldn't hurt. After that, he grabbed his bag and stuffed the remaining pile of clothes in the dryer into the largest compartment and zipped it up, not bothering to fold or sort through it. He assumed that you grabbed everything of yours, so he didn't bother double-checking. Bakugou carried his bag with him into the bathroom for a much-needed shower. Rather than drench himself in ice water to clear his head, Bakugou succumbed to the heat and scrubbed until his skin turned red. Although he was tempted to ease his stress, it was probably stupid to do so when you were right outside. He knew himself well enough to know that keeping quiet wasn't his specialty. While he was only human, he could wait until you were back at work the next day when he had some privacy. Part of him felt like a guilty pervert for even considering it, but so long as he kept it a secret, then it wouldn't be a damn problem. When he was finished and had fully composed himself, Bakugou grabbed all his things out of the shower and slid them into the plastic bag you'd given him to avoid leaks. He warmed up his hands and ran his fingers through his hair to dry it most of the way, before walking out to help you finish the remaining chores. With the two of you working together, you finished cleaning the cabin with time to spare. Since most of the food was gone, there wasn't much to pack either. The last thing you wanted was for the rental company to keep your security deposit over something as minute as crumbs on the countertop. The awkwardness from earlier seemed to have faded as well, much to your appreciation. You were both adults and could deal with making out vigorously on a stranger's couch without blushing every 5 minutes like schoolchildren. Bakugou just had this effect on you that pulled you closer to him every day. Figuring it out sounded far too exhausting after the weekend you'd had.
That it?
Asked Bakugou, while he took a look around the cabin to examine the clean table and folded blankets on the couch. Yeah, I think so. Your finger slid down the checkout list once more and you concluded that everything was in its proper place. I feel like I'm forgetting something, though. Oh! You clapped your hands together before shaking your fist angrily, prompting Bakugou to look at you strangely. Before we leave, I'm going to call them and complain about the mix-up to get some of my money back because I'm petty like that. Bakugou actually snorted at that and shot a small smirk your way.
I'd probably do the same thing.
He paused as though there was something else he wanted to say, some extra detail to tack on. But instead, he said,
I'll put the stuff in your car. Give me the keys.
You decided not to pry. For the rest of the day, you just wanted to feel relaxed and at ease even though your mind was jumbled with ideas. Sure. After handing him the keys, you found the number you called on Friday and paced around the living room until someone answered. Of course, the people on the phone gave you the runaround for the next half hour, connecting you to a different department, claiming the call Friday wasn't in their database, that you were mistaken, etc. Anything to keep them from paying you back a single cent. Bakugou seemed to watch this play out with mild amusement, your facial expressions and fuming making him chuckle. If he was the one on the phone yelling up a storm, you knew they'd scramble to correct the mistake. But you weren't a pushover and wouldn't quit complaining until they made up for it. By the time you hung up, you felt exhausted enough to take a nap, but you actually managed to get half of your entire trip cost refunded. Take that, assholes! You exclaimed with a triumphant fist in the air.
Congratulations.
Bakugou spun your car keys around his index finger like a hula hoop.
You ready to go now?
With a nod, you made one final sweep of the place to make sure you didn't leave anything in the bathroom before locking the front door and leaving the key in the hidden lockbox. You mentally said goodbye to the cabin and walked down the path with Bakugou as he handed you the keys. Once the two of you were situated in the car, you plugged up your phone and put in your home address. You needed the GPS for the first half, but once you got back on the highway, you could figure it out from there. It'll start to get dark by the time we get back. Are you fine with ordering out for dinner? It's been a long day. Unless you're determined to cook? With his arms folded behind his head, Bakugou closed his eyes and said,
Go for it. I'll take a break tonight.
Thought so. You hummed to yourself before adding, Thanks for agreeing to the trip, Bakugou. Despite everything that happened yesterday, I still don't regret coming. And you were right about it not being ruined. At that, Bakugou opened his eyes and cut them to you, ruby irises catching the sunlight filtering in through the windshield.
Don't doubt me. And using my quirk again? I really fucking needed that. And it's all thanks to you.
You tucked a strand of hair behind your ear sheepishly. Whenever Bakugou thanked you, which wasn't often, you always felt an odd sense of embarrassment. You're welcome. Also, guess what?
What?
No stupid bears in the city. He couldn't help but bark out a final laugh at that as you started the car and began the 2-hour trip home. The ride was fairly quiet for the first half of the trip as you focused on the winding dirt roads down the mountain and navigating the unfamiliar small-town streets. You turned some music on low to keep yourself alert since you and Bakugou couldn't really talk for a while. At one point, you looked over and assumed he had actually fallen asleep. His otherworldly perception must have felt your eyes on him because he peeked one eye open and stuck his tongue out at you before closing his eyes again. What an adorably handsome brat. Once the two of you could talk again, casual conversation picked up easily. You were grateful for the company since long drives on these boring roads sometimes made your eyes drift and your attention waver. You nearly forgot to stop at the corner store for bandages when you finally neared your apartment. By now, you felt your eyelids start to droop even though the days seemed to have flown by. Let me stop here and get some bandages and antiseptic. Want to come in with me? Bakugou shook his head.
I'll keep an eye on the car. Don't take forever.
You just rolled your eyes at his monotone dramatics. Shut up, it'll take 10 minutes. With that, you hopped out and walked inside the store 5 minutes away from your apartment. Truth be told, Bakugou was tired. Not physically, but mentally and emotionally. The drama of the weekend had worn him down, and all he wanted to do was get back to your place, eat, and go the fuck to sleep. Where exactly he'd end up sleeping tonight, he wasn't exactly sure yet. A noise outside distracted him from his thoughts. Bakugou looked out the passenger side window to see a slobbering dog staring right at him from a couple of parking spots away. It barked once, before returning to the dopey-looking smile that only dogs could make. 10 minutes flew by far quicker than he imagined, because you suddenly appeared in front of the window to block his view of the dog, and had caught him red-handed making stupid faces just to get it to react. As nonchalantly as he could manage, Bakugou steeled his face and crossed his arms defensively, as he got into the other side of the car with what he knew was a shit-eating grin.
Not a word,
he grit out, emphasizing every syllable. You held up a finger to get his attention while stifling a laugh. I will let this slide. Only if you agree not to make fun of me the next time I do something equally hilarious. A pinky extended towards him, wiggling expectantly. Deal? A pinky promise? How childish. But he groaned and did as you requested, wrapping his pinky around yours to avoid a long night of you annoying him about making faces at an excited dog out of boredom. By the time you finally made it back home, you felt your eyelids grow heavier by the minute.
Oi, wake up. Can't sleep yet,
Bakugou said, snapping his fingers in your face once you found a parking space. You grumbled, but decided it was best to hurry up. The sooner you got inside, the sooner you could eat and relax. Without the food, the two of you easily carried all the bags inside in one trip. You practically stumbled into the apartment and dropped your bags onto the floor once you were clear of the hallway. Hello, Bear-Free Home. I missed you. You never thought you'd long for the familiar smells and average aesthetics of your apartment, but you were glad to finally be home. Taking out your phone, you asked, "Do you care what I order?" to Bakugou, as he wasted no time in putting up the food.
Fuck it, surprise me.
It felt good to be at ease with him again, and you hoped the rest of the night would continue without drama or stress. You flipped through the takeout menus in your kitchen drawer and decided on some Chinese, a classic staple after a long day. Lazing on the couch, you ordered enough for Bakugou and yourself, picking out something with some spice to it for him. Food should be here soon, you said, before hopping up to dig through what Bakugou just put up to grab a cookie. Arriving back home had energized you just a bit.
You sure you aren't addicted to those things by now?
He asked, obviously poking fun at your love of sweets. You just rolled your eyes and flipped him off to rile him up. I'm allowed to eat the cookies I bought. I'm an adult and don't have to follow the no dessert before dinner rule, so deal with it. Just to emphasize your point, you grabbed another cookie and stared him down as if daring him to take it away from you. The two of you bickered playfully about cookies, as though the traumatizing events of the weekend hadn't happened at all. It was in the past and you were dealing with it for the most part. Anxiety rose up if you thought about it too much, and, despite Bakugou's words of comfort, guilt over feeling weak and needing protection still ate at you like the constant itching of a bug bite. At one point, your phone rang, silencing you both. It happened so rarely that you stared at it for a full 2 seconds before swallowing the last bite of cookie and answering it despite the unfamiliar number. Watching you speak on the phone was interesting to Bakugou. He couldn't understand most of what you were saying, but your facial expressions were easy enough to read with how overly dramatic you acted half the time. First confusion, then some sort of realization, and finally an edge of nervous excitement maybe? While you were talking, however, he heard a knock at the door and guessed that it was the food. You gestured for him to go to the door since you were still on the phone. Must be someone important for you not to pause the conversation over food. Bakugou opened the door to stand face to face with an average-looking guy dressed in what he assumed was the restaurant uniform. "Hey, got your food here," the man said, holding out the bags. Bakugou took it and was about to close the door, but the guy still held out his hand. Can I get paid, please?"
Fuck, I guess he wants money. I hate being broke here. Oi!
He called back inside the apartment to get your attention. You rifled through your purse, still wrapped up on the phone, and stuffed a wad of crumpled bills into his hand before wandering off again. The exact conversation rate between yen and your money was lost on him, so Bakugou just assumed you gave him the right amount. Bakugou unceremoniously dropped the money into the man's waiting hand and promptly shut the door in his face without a second glance. When he turned around, you were scribbling something quickly on a sheet of paper. Your phone balanced precariously between your ear and shoulder. Now he really wondered who the hell you were talking to. He set the paper containers out on the counter. It smelled good, at least, and noticed that chopsticks were included. Forcing you to eat with those sounded like a plan. By the time day 35 rolled around, he'd make sure you could use the damn things properly. You looked dazed as he looked up to see you finally off the phone. Clearing his throat to bring your attention back to him, despite denying enjoying being in the spotlight, you blinked a few times and pulled up the translator app, a smile growing wider on your face each passing second.
Well, who was that? Your mom again?
It was the only person he'd seen you talk with on the phone, even though this call seemed very different from the others. No. You answered with a shake of your head. One of the places I sent my resume to last week wants to bring me in for an interview. Your voice grew louder with excitement, and by the time you finished speaking, you were practically hopping up and down like a bunny rabbit. Once it registered, Bakugou couldn't keep the smirk off his face.
Holy shit, that's...
You cut him off by scurrying around the counter, wrapping him up in a tight hug, and pinning his arms to his side before planting an enthusiastic kiss on his cheek. All of that sudden affection culminated in his ears turning red. After a few seconds, you pulled away from a stunned Bakugou and looked completely unapologetic. Thank you for encouraging me to find a new job. Maybe it'll go well and I can finally quit. The beaming smile you gave him was nothing but genuine, and he wasn't sure what to do about all this appreciation being thrust his way. But he didn't have to do anything because your attention immediately shifted to the boxes of food. Wow, all that made me hungry. Let's eat! You divided up the non-spicy food as best you could, though the two of you snipped at each other over portions and certain pieces of meat or vegetables. The package of chopsticks mocked you, but rather than shy away, you felt a rush of confidence and snatched them up, determined to use them properly with time. That phone call was the perfect bit of good news you needed to round out a rocky weekend. The chunkier pieces of food weren't as troublesome as the rice that slipped through your chopsticks and back onto the plate. You looked at Bakugou, who, of course, had no issue and licked his lips with a smug grin.
Still can't use 'em right?
He asked sarcastically. I'm working on it. Better than the first time, at least.
Pff, barely.
Shut it. You knew he was just poking fun at you over something dumb like he always did. It felt good to return to the casual banter while sitting safely in your own apartment. Changing the subject, Bakugou then asked,
You said there was a ramen place by your office, right?
You swallowed a pitiful bite of rice while nodding. Yeah, why?
Can I meet you there for lunch one day this week? Ramen is hard to make from scratch and it takes forever and most of the ingredients weren't at your store. What?
You just stared at him. The unexpectedness of such an innocuous question surprised you. Bakugou rarely asked or requested anything of you, so for him to recall this detail you told him in passing, it must have been important. You were sure that a lack of traditional Japanese food probably made him homesick, even more than he already was. You want to meet me there for lunch? You didn't mean it to come out with a tone of incredulity.
That a problem?
Squinting his eyes in suspicion, you quickly shook your head to dismiss any growing assumptions. No way. That sounds nice, actually. Pick a day and I'll meet you there. It's right across from my office if you remember where it is. Bakugou wanted to go out and meet you for lunch during the day, something he hadn't even hinted at wanting before. Maybe your relationship with him, despite the occasional awkwardness, was moving somewhere nice. He wanted to spend more time with you, and that alone made your heart flutter.
Dummy. Of course I remember. How's Wednesday?
He asked. You nodded and narrowly missed a piece of meat falling into your lap, playing it off innocently. Wednesday works fine.
When's your interview for this new place?
Bakugou really was full of questions tonight, but you weren't going to complain about him being talkative or inquiring about your generally boring life. Tuesday. I really hope I can nail it. It had been a few years since you'd been through the interview process. Tomorrow night sounded like a good opportunity to brush up on some common questions and answers. The company generally has higher salaries than what I make now. They have better job opportunities too for moving up into managerial positions. I've heard good things and I think it's time for a change. Bakugou stared at you and issued a low hum once your phone finished translating. He saw idealistic stars in your eyes during your rambling and couldn't help but inquire further.
If you hate your job so much, why did it take so long to find a new one?
He watched you push the remaining bits of rice and meat around on your plate, your shoulders dropping the tiniest fraction. I guess I got comfortable. I just wanted a job after college and maybe didn't think I was cut out for anything better than mediocre. Settling is never a good thing. I figured keeping my head down and working hard would earn me recognition, but it didn't work out that way. Sometimes you can work your ass off and go nowhere through no fault of your own. He listened intently as you aired your vulnerability so openly to him. Truth be told, Bakugou knew damn well how it felt to work hard and still come in last at the end of the day. His ego had gotten in the way of his own progress when he was younger, but he had no one to blame but himself for that one. This, however, it wasn't your damn fault, and Bakugou felt like motivating the hell out of you at that moment.
Listen up,
he stated abruptly. You stared with wide eyes at him, and he met your gaze with fire in his ruby irises.
Those dumbasses at your office are as stupid as they sound if they don't see your potential. I can tell you work hard and know you put way more effort into things than you need to. You'll kick ass in this interview and leave those bastards behind.
Bakugou finished his morale-boosting rant with a cocky smile full of confidence. Maybe you could leech some off him for a couple of days. He watched you stiffen at his words as your face went red from his fiery pep talk. You still took compliments terribly, even if they were completely true. A shy smile crept onto your face, however, so hopefully you took it to heart. After dinner, he watched you drag your overnight bag into your room and disappear for a few minutes before you came out in pajamas while holding your book. You sat down on the couch and started reading, which reminded him that he'd probably be back to sleeping on the damn couch again. He missed his own bed fiercely, and the last couple of nights had been a respite he desperately needed and appreciated. Earlier, when you called to get your refund from the mix-up, he'd almost said something about the mistake being worth it, but decided against it at the last second. One night next to you had already started an addiction, and the oncoming withdrawal soured his expression. As you silently read your book, you felt your eyes become heavy once more, the burst of energy after the phone call now gone. A full belly probably contributed too. Bakugou sat down on the other end of the couch and stared at you, prompting you to peer at him over the top of your book. It seemed like he wanted to say something, so you turned on your phone and set it between the two of you.
Go to sleep,
he ordered. You really were tired, and despite the ongoing distractions of the day and being back home, a tickle at the back of your mind wondered if the nightmares would return once you closed your eyes in the darkness. A nudge against your leg brought your attention back to Bakugou. As if reading your mind, he asked,
"You gonna be okay?"
He was so perceptive sometimes that it surprised you with the secrets you managed to keep from him. Yeah, I think I'll be alright. I'm back home, and there are no bears around. The look he gave you told you he didn't quite believe you. I'm fine. I promise not to wake you up this time. Honestly, the thought of Bakugou sleeping next to you again sounded so deliciously appealing, but you decided to put up a brave front. You wanted to prove you could overcome this on your own, even though you appreciated his help more than you could express. Bakugou seemed to fidget at your answers as though he wanted to tack on something else. Hesitation seemed rare for Bakugou, so you weren't sure what was on his mind. But ultimately, he shook his head, an almost imperceptible amount as though tossing away the thought. Are you okay? You couldn't help but ask, curiosity getting to you.
Fine,
he grit out while avoiding looking at you.
You should go to sleep. You have work tomorrow, right?
You bit your lip, unsure of what to make of his attitude shift, but now seemed like the wrong time to press. Yeah, all right. Let me just brush my teeth first. You disappeared into the bathroom and went through your normal nighttime routine while trying to avoid stressing out about Bakugou's hidden thoughts or bears that couldn't hurt you. Bakugou stood in the living room with an oddly closed-off expression. He'd been so open with you lately that it did nothing to help your racing yet tired mind. Craving one last taste of affection, you walked up to him and pointed to your lips. He rolled his eyes but gave in to one last goodnight kiss, chaste and quick compared to the steamy ones from earlier this afternoon. "Good night, Bakugou," you whispered. He hummed before you slipped into your bedroom and closed the door, leaving Bakugou standing alone in your living room. You crawled into your bed with all the familiar scents and textures it offered. The bed in the cabin was large and soft, but nothing beat the feeling of safety being back at home. Before you closed your eyes, you grabbed the stuffed animal from the fair and held it close to you to draw as much comfort from it as possible. After tossing and turning for a while, you finally managed to fall asleep, but not as soundly as you'd hoped. Dark forest, billowing trees, disembodied snarls. Static filled your ears like cotton as you groped for solace but found none as you sank deeper and deeper into a bottomless expanse of emptiness devoid of light or escape. Heavy footfalls rocked the air around you like an earthquake. Broken twigs sounded like 100 glass shards shattering all at once. You tossed and turned helplessly, with nothing to grab onto before a bloody, red maw unzippered. It was like peering into the heart of an erupting volcano, red and bubbling and vicious. The size of an ant in comparison, you screamed as the maw swallowed you whole and, "No!" You screamed as you toppled out of your bed after startling yourself awake from the nightmare. With your pulse racing and your breathing uneven, you opened your eyes to see that you were in your bedroom and not, in fact, being chewed up between gnashing giant teeth. You lay on the floor groaning and cursing when the bedroom door flew open to reveal Bakugou's silhouette barely visible in the dark. He flipped on the light switch and you shut your eyes from the harshness of the light. "Shit."
You okay?
He asked while standing over you with an outstretched hand as you slowly adjusted to the light. With his help, you untangled yourself from the sheets and stood up only to realize your hands were shaking. You wanted to say, "Yes, I'm fine, don't worry." You wanted to nod and pretend like a fucking nightmare hadn't just woken you up for the second night in a row. But you knew he wouldn't have believed you even if you did attempt to lie. You had hoped that being home and away from the wood would have helped, but the trauma ran deeper than you realized, and you couldn't help but feel the dampness of tears at the corners of your eyes and shake your head. Bakugou sighed and pulled you into a tight hug as you tried to let his warmth force out intrusive thoughts of claws and teeth. After a minute, you pulled away and attempted to wipe away your tears before he saw them. You grabbed your phone and pulled up the translator, your fingers still slightly jittery. "I guess I'm not as okay as I thought I was," you admitted hesitantly. "Do you mind staying with me again tonight?" When Bakugou had heard a thud from your room as he attempted to get used to sleeping on your couch again, he knew immediately what had happened. And now he didn't feel as nervous saying yes to you, since that was honestly what he wanted to push earlier, but decided against it at the last second.
"Yeah, I'll stay."
He watched you relax almost immediately before he turned around, flipped the light switch, and closed your door. Crawling into bed next to you this time felt different because this was your bed, not a strange bed in a vacation home. A guilty feeling settled heavily in his chest at the fact that he was glad you'd had a nightmare. Not because he wanted you to be scared, obviously, but because you needed him to feel safe. He left space between the two of you again, but held out his hand in the middle of the mattress. You found it easily, just like the previous night, and held it tightly. Your bed smelled overwhelmingly of you, of your laundry detergent, of your shampoo, of whatever natural scent you gave off that filled his nose whenever he was close enough to feel you against him. All of that familiarity together eased him enough to help him fall asleep, while hoping his calloused and scarred hands, with the capacity to destroy and burn, gave you the sense of safety you sought in him. No more nightmares. No more fear. But always more car. My God, they're really just circling around. Okay. Do you guys know what diamond painting is? You know, while the noise is going on outside. Do you guys know what diamond painting is? I got another one. I'm a huge, like, BTS fan, and
I found all these, like, diamond paintings that they have, where you put, like, little beads on a canvas. Like, it's, like, glue on it, and you just put, like, they give you beads as well, like, with corresponding colors and stuff, and you just basically put the little beads on the canvas, and it just gives color to the canvas, and it's just, like, it's so pretty because it sparkles and stuff. So I have two, and I got myself another one today, and I'm so excited to work on it because they help me relax a lot. One of them I have is like, oh, Jesus, everything is just going on today. Nobody's gonna let me record anything. Okay, great. Anyway, I have this one where it's like 20 by 16 inch, so it's not too big, but it's a really nice frame of one of the guys, J-Hope, and it just looks really good. That was the first one I did. And then the second one I did was like a huge canvas, and it's like with all 7 members, and that's like, oh, it's pretty long. It's like 55, almost 55 inches long, and then like, I want to say maybe 25 inches. No, 25 inches lengthwise, and then width size is like 55 inches, so it's a really big canvas. And I did that one, and I had to put the framing on as well, and that was a big hassle, but I did it, and it looks beautiful, and I love it.
Sorry, this is not exactly a blooper. It's just I'm so bored waiting here for the helicopter to go by. It's literally just like circling around. I think somebody decided to commit a crime today, and they decided to do it here in my neighborhood, which sucks because I just wanted to record today, but such is life. How are you guys doing? Okay, I think I'll cut this short now. It's too long. Bye. The thought of going back to your couch made him grimace. For fuck's sake, who is it? Bollocks. Who is trying to contact me? Eh? What's happening? Oop, I'm still recording. Oops. So he gestured down the path that led towards the cabin. My tongue got stuck there. Towards. When you tried to backtrack, he jumped right over you and landed effortlessly. For fuck sake. I hate this word. Trashy, please. I implore you to stop using this word. Petition to remove effortlessly from the dictionary. His tongue licking across your lips to ask for permission. Permission. 'Cause we don't need permission. A kiss. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Sorry. But that brief breath of fuck, I can't read.